Child prodigy Frank enters the inventors competition at the New York World's Fair in 1964. When Frank admits that his prototype jetpack isn't that effective, Judge Nix is initially rather thrilled with it, but rapidly has second thoughts. Even though Frank is liked by Nick's assistant Athena, Nix won't let him compete until the jetpack is functional. Frank is devastated as he leaves, and can't stop remembering all the times his own father told him he was wasting his time. Abruptly, Athena approaches him, hands him an orange lapel pin with a blue T on it, and instructs him to follow her, and Nix so no one would see them. Frank slips through the side and hops onto an empty boat, while Nix and his friends head onto a popular attraction, and the line gets rather lengthy. A trapdoor that leads the boat down a dimly lit corridor is opened by a laser that recognizes Frank's pin in the middle of the journey. Frank is excited to go into the futuristic-looking wagon when it emerges, but as soon as he does, all of the doors and windows are blocked by metal blinds, and the wagon starts to shake violently. Frank hits the ground and is unable to get back up until the wagon comes to a stop. Frank emerges to find himself on a platform shrouded in dense fog as doors open. He is shocked to see Athena and Nix inside a flying car that passes by. When Frank tries to follow them, enormous robots try to stop him by appearing in front of him. As he tries to avoid the robotic arms by running around the platform, the child trips and falls onto the platform below, shattering his jetpack. A helpful robot shows up, fixes the jetpack, and returns it to Frank. Frank is about to be taken into custody by a group of guards, so he moves away and trips over again. But because he had his jetpack this time, he strapped it on and turned it on, finally being able to take to the skies with it, because of the robot's repairs. After flying through a cloud, Frank finds himself in Tomorrowland, a futuristic metropolis populated only by the most brilliant minds. Frank lands close to Athena and uses the opportunity to tell Nix that he's fixed the jetpack. Frank is ignored by Nix, but Athena holds his hand and shows him what his life will be like moving forward. Years later, in 2015, a teenage girl named Casey breaks into the NASA launch site in Florida with the intention of sabotaging all the machinery that will be utilized for the destruction. Her motivation is to keep her dad, an engineer for NASA, employed. While keeping an eye on everything from the shadows, Athena uses a tiny scanner to retrieve Casey's DNA from her bike helmet and codes it into her final Tomorrowland pin after Casey gets home. Eddie, Casey's father, receives a call from work the following morning outlining the circumstances. Eddie says they'll bring replacement cranes, so Casey really needs to give up trying. Casey believes she has saved his job, but Casey tells him that holding on to hope is more crucial. Casey tries to stop the demolition again in the evening, but this time the police are ready for her, so she is taken into custody. After a few hours, the bail is paid, and Casey gathers her possessions to head back home. She discovers the pin among everything else, and as soon as she touches it, she experiences an abrupt vision of another location. The pin drops, and Casey has the same outcome when she touches it once again. When Casey tries to walk to the massive city in the distance, the pin falls and she ends up back in jail because her movements force her to knock into objects and people in the room. This time, she successfully takes the pin and finds herself staring at the city. Casey uses a gum wrapper to pick up the pin in order to avoid further difficulty. Eddie arrives at that precise moment to take up Casey after posting bail. He chastises Casey for her behavior on the drive home, so she forces him to touch the pin with the assurance that it will clarify everything. Eddie touches the pin, though, and nothing happens. Bewildered, Casey touches the pin herself, and finds herself in a different reality, concluding that this is only effective for her. Eddie takes the pin away from Casey after growing weary of her endless babbling about it. Upon arriving home, Casey bides his time until Eddie nods off so he can take the pin from his night table. She appears in a different universe as soon as she touches it, and when she moves toward the city, she stumbles and even tumbles down the steps of her home. Eddie gets awakened by the noise, so Casey decides to conceal and carry out this activity someplace else. When Casey approaches a pin in the center of a large field, she is finally able to arrive in Tomorrowland. She finds out that pin has a timer that is running out, and that no one can see her when she is riding the train farther into the city. At the next stop, Casey gets off the train and watches some prominent scientists get onto a different kind of wagon. She tries to follow them, but as the pin timer approaches zero, water appears all around her. Though Casey pushes through the water, Tomorrowland quickly vanishes, and she finds herself in a swamp, despite her best efforts to ignore it. Upon her arrival home, Casey asks her brother Nate for the password to their father's computer, waking him up in the process. When the siblings look for the pin online, they come across an advertisement for a shop that will buy pins from anybody. Casey asks Nate to inform their father that she is going camping with some pals, and jots down the shop's address. Nate tells Athena the camping excuse. When she arrives at the house in the morning, he finally confesses after Athena puts pressure on him, because she can see he's lying. Casey arrives at the store as a result of the advertisement. The bazaar clerks verify that what Casey observed was genuine, and show a definite interest in it. The only way to enter Tomorrowland, a place where the greatest minds have come together to create freely free from the grip of greed and politics, is through the pin. The clerks click a button to lock the door, and display a pair of futuristic weaponry that can shoot plasma in an attempt to get Casey to cooperate so they can buy the pin and find out where she obtained it. Even though Casey tries to blend in with the items, the clerks manage to identify her and ask for details on a female. Abruptly, a grenade bursts through the window, trapping the clerks inside a force field and freezing them. After telling Casey it's a time bomb that won't last long and assisting her in removing her hand from the field, an armed Athena also enters the store. Sadly, this sets off the bomb, allowing the clerks to retake control and launch a counterattack. With Casey's assistance, Athena engages in hand-to-hand combat with them. When Athena removes one of their heads, Casey is startled to learn that both clerks were animatronics. Athena pulls Casey from the store just in time to prevent the explosion after declaring the animatronics are set to explode. Athena then uses a special gadget to start the automobile after smashing a window to let Casey inside, and explaining that they must flee before they discover them. When Casey starts to ask questions while driving, Athena responds that she was the one who gave her the pin. Before she can say anything more, she starts acting strangely, and Casey, who is also an animatronic, watches in dismay while Athena heals herself. Fearful, Casey leaps off the vehicle, and Athena attempts to pursue her. However, the moment she crosses the street, a truck strikes her. As soon as the driver arrives to see how she is doing, Casey seizes the opportunity to steal the truck and make off. Athena, on the other hand, is okay and chases after the vehicle right away, leaping through the window to take the keys and lock the door. Casey starts to yell, but Athena eventually stops her by telling her that Casey is her last hope, and that they must leave right away for Tomorrowland since they constructed something improper. When the police arrive at the destroyed business, they find a charred robot head. Before they can do any further research, a man by the name of Dave appears and claims to be from Secret Service. Dave also pulls out a futuristic weapon, after noticing the mechanical head, and kills all the police before turning to his friends and telling them they've located the girl and they should notify Nix. In search of the one person who can return them to Tomorrowland, the ladies are traveling to New York. Athena becomes reticent and stops responding when Casey starts inquiring about the other individuals who received pins. When Athena wakes up the following morning, she takes over the wheel so Casey may get some rest. When Casey goes to sleep, Athena amuses herself by thinking back on all the enjoyable times she used to spend with her friend. Athena informs Casey that the person they would be visiting is named Frank. A few hours later, Casey awakens to find herself abruptly thrown from the truck in front of a rural house. Casey is forced to approach the house as Athena is leaving, only to be met with a guard dog's pursuit. When Casey trips and falls onto the mud, she realizes that the dog is a hologram and isn't really leaving prints. Casey asks to be sent to Tomorrowland by showing her pin to the camera as she knocks on the door, ignoring the false beast. Casey is pushed back by a sharp gust of wind, and an older Frank emerges from the home and asks to know where Athena is. When Frank learns that she has left, he becomes enraged and orders Casey to leave because Tomorrowland is nothing more than a deceptive fiction. Frank then goes back to his home and closes the door. Casey waits outside in the pouring rain, refusing to go. She eventually grows weary and seeks around for something to do. Casey gets Frank to leave the house by lighting a fire in the plowing truck. While Frank is too preoccupied putting out the flames, Casey rushes inside and locks the door. Casey simply uses the same burst of air to push Frank away when he tries to enter again. As Casey starts to explore the mansion, he discovers all kinds of bizarre creations. A specific machine plays a recording of a young Frank attempting to make Athena laugh, and being told to give up. She discovers a number of screens in another area that are showing the news, and a timer that is gradually running out. Frank returns inside the house prepared to eject Casey when a hidden door beneath the stairs suddenly opens, but she persuades him to give her some information. Frank was expelled from Tomorrowland for constructing the timer that was attached to the screens, something he shouldn't have done. Casey responds that she would like to know the exact date of her death, but she doesn't think she would trust him since they need to be able to control their own fate. He asks if Casey would want to know the exact date of her death. Frank is really impressed by this statement because it causes the percentage on the screen to decrease. The two are abruptly cut off from their talk as Dave and his agents, which are actually robots on the lookout for Casey, Rive. Frank turns on all of the metal blinds right away. When a robot tries to enter despite her strength, Frank uses a gadget to electrocute her. An electrical trap on the wall destroys another robot, and Frank eliminates two more by forcing them to fall down a hidden trapdoor. One more robot is waiting in the living room, which Frank and Casey dash to. Casey assists Frank in defeating it through hand-to-hand combat by seizing a unique portal machine and inserting the robot inside. After moving upstairs, the two fall into more of the house's traps, whereupon Dave follows them and puts a gun to Frank's head. Fortunately, Casey finds a bat and bashes Dave unconscious with it. After dragging Casey into the bathroom, Frank turns on the tub, turning it into a capsule, and they jump in. Frank launches the tub just in time to prevent another robot from chasing after them, and causes the capsule to fly out and land on the lake. Frank has a non-starting bike concealed in the woods, where he and Casey go swimming. A light unexpectedly approaches the two, startling them, but it's simply Athena coming to get them. Frank and Athena argue as soon as they get on the road. When the three of them get in the vehicle and head out, it is revealed that Athena stole the final box, containing 12 pins in order to continue recruiting people, and that all pins were intended to be destroyed. Frank is incensed that more youth have been drawn into this, and he informs Casey that Athena is lying, and that she is simply ignoring you when you ask too many questions. Frank believes that Athena pretends to be upset in order to entice you in, and then leave you. Despite her injuries, Athena chooses to put it aside in order to lead them to the nearby station, where Frank has set up his covert network to send signals to his home. Once the humans put on the appropriate safety gear, they trigger the device that teleports them away, and another capsule is waiting for them. When they get there, Casey realizes they're standing on the Eiffel Tower. A guard is stationed close to the entrance, but fortunately Frank has brought along a number of inventions, including a little device that lets Casey subdue the officer with a single tap. They go inside a room that houses an exhibition of well-known inventors, and Frank tells them that Tomorrowland was founded by Edison, Tesla, Verne, and Eiffel, who used the Eiffel Tower as an antenna to travel to another planet. There have long been whispers about a hidden entrance, which Frank opens after looking about. More robots are on their way to grab the group, so they dash inside as the Eiffel Tower splits in two and reveals a rocket. Robots are pushed away by the rocket's launch energy, and after a period of time in the air, the robot returns, opening a portal as it plummets rapidly. The group arrives in Tomorrowland a short while later. Frank forces Athena to conceal a unique bomb he carried with him inside her body because the authorities are pursuing them after witnessing their fall. Nix, the governor of the city, is the first to encounter them and intends to take them into custody. He instantly changes his mind after hearing from Frank and Athena that Casey can reduce the percentage on screens. Startled, Nix brings the group to the headquarters, where Frank's lethal creation, a Tachyon machine, is kept. Casey witnesses holograms, flashes of the future, when they ride the elevator. These are produced by a machine that uses a particle that travels much faster than light. After the group enters the machine's center, Frank shows Casey how to use it so she can view any period of human history. After learning that the machine can also view forward, Casey is surprised to discover herself in her own home from a few mornings ago. She starts rapidly scanning through history until she eventually recognizes the problem. According to the machine, the world will end in 58 days. When Casey asks why they aren't alerting those on Earth, Nix responds that he doesn't give a damn because it's Earth, not Tomorrowland, that will end. Furthermore, he won't let anyone settle there since they'll ruin Tomorrowland the same way they destroyed Earth. Because of Casey's refusal to accept this, the screen briefly flickers, depicting a better world. Nix simply knocks them all out. Despite Frank's attempts to argue that this shows there is hope, Frank discovers Athena warning them they'll be deported once more when he wakes up a little while later. Frank tries to cheer Casey up, but she loses it and accuses them of lying to her. Casey is depressed because she feels like this entire experience has been for nothing. She is going to start screaming, when she suddenly realizes that Frank has been watching the machine signal at his house by pirating it, and that the signal is floating around Earth, zapping people's heads with these dire predictions. Though it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, if Casey's optimism could alter it, then it implies that shutting it off might enable people to once more see the light. The three are picked up by the Guardians in order to be expelled from Tomorrowland via a gateway. When Casey tries to tell Nix what she found and asks him to switch the machine off, Nix responds that there isn't a button for it. Frank is made aware of the reality by his composed demeanor. Nix is purposefully implanting the notion in people's minds. According to Nix, attempts to inform the authorities about the impending apocalypse were previously dismissed. As a result, he decided to send the notion straight to people's minds as a warning to alter their behavior. But rather of striving for a brighter tomorrow, humanity conceded that the end of the world was inevitable. Nix feels that humans is to blame for this. The computer is not to blame. Frank shakes hands with Nix, pretending to accept, but all he does is touch his wristband and reset the machine platform. When Frank confronts Nix, who triggers two robots to pursue the girls, Athena and Casey take down the guards. When Athena tries to utilize the explosives that Frank provided her, the robots catch her. Casey receives the explosives from Athena as she battles the robots, and as she rushes to the platform, Frank and Nix begin squabbling over the bracelet that is on the other side of the portal. Taking control of one of the robots, Athena forces the other one through the portal and attacks Nix as well. Casey watches a flash of the future, and manages to set off the bomb, but just as she is ready to toss it, Nix takes back control of the bracelet and pulls the platform down. After racing to the control panel to shut the portal, destroy the second robot, and send Frank and Nix outside, Athena rushes to grab the platform with her robot. Casey discovers the bomb at that precise moment, and it is about to detonate. With no other option, Athena opens the portal once more. The guys hurl the bomb into the portal, causing it to explode away from them. After they dash back inside, Nix is trapped when the gateway shatter and land on top of him, but he reaches for a gun that's close by to murder Frank. When Athena notices that Frank is dying, she knows it's a flash from the future, and rushes to get in the way of the picture. Frank tries to take Athena to a repair shop, when Casey takes the gun from Nix, but Athena tells him to stop because there isn't enough time. She plays a number of recordings from their time together all those years ago because she needs Frank to know something extremely important before she passes away. When Frank was younger and discovered Athena was a machine, it wounded him. He had a crush on her. Athena was always concerned by this and kept voice diaries detailing how Frank made her feel uncomfortable in ways that a robot shouldn't. It's time for Athena to go, but Frank is relieved to learn that she liked him too, and that she never lost faith in him. She wants them to utilize that explosion to stop the machine because she believes her body is going to explode. Athena is lifted into the air by Frank using a jetpack, and then she is put inside the machine after they say their goodbyes. Nix is killed when the entire building blows up and the debris lands on him. Frank tries to maintain control of the jetpack so that Tom Orland can at least land in the river safely as it loses power. As they discuss what to do next, a series of glimpses from the future give Casey, who has hurried to check on him, an idea. Frank must first fix the gateway before Casey and her family can get back together. Subsequently, they collaborate to relaunch the PIN program, for which they construct several robots similar to Athena. These robots tour the globe via a portal, leaving pins for inquisitive minds that might lead to the creation of a better earthly future.